pour refuse into the gutters. Floods kill and render our neighbors homeless. Let's be our brother's keeper. Report offenders to the appropriate authorities. This message is from 92.3 Nigeria Info.
You spend a lot of your hard-earned money to purchase the things in your house and at your business centers. And thus, you must do what you can to protect and maintain them. Accidents can and do happen. So we at 92.3 Nigeria Info would like to encourage you to take the following steps to prevent a fire outbreak. First, install a fire alarm. Ask your electrician about fire alarms, as some can be affordable. Educate children around you. Take time to explain the dangers of fire and teach them the safety protocols and numbers to call in case of emergencies. Be wary of electrical appliances. They may make our lives easier, but they can be dangerous when they become faulty. Ensure a professional repairs or helps with the installation of home appliances. Do not make illegal power connections. Exercise caution when cooking. As you prepare your food, please stay close by. Resist the urge to take a nap or do other things whilst cooking. Also, ensure flammable substances are not close to your burner. Do not store fuel or diesel at home. Many fires have started because of petroleum products being stored in the homes of many Nigerians. Get a fire extinguisher. A fire extinguisher will go a long way to either reduce the spread or stop a fire if caught early. Keep fire-causing tools and items safe in storage. And finally, regular training, reminders, and updates to both family and staff members will keep individuals alert to safety protocols. Know the emergency numbers to call.
92.3 Nigeria Info welcomes all comments that are constructive and contribute to discussions in a meaningful manner. However, we will not condone the following on air or online: racism, including offensive comments based on ethnicity and nationality, sexism, religious intolerance, hate speech, derogatory language, and comments inciting violence. We ask that your comments remain relevant to topics raised and that you avoid general banter or conversation as it dilutes the discussion. We strive to make the station a safe and welcoming platform for all. Nigeria Info reserves the right to and calls or remove any comments that do not follow the above guidelines. Ban users who repeatedly infringe on the rules. Should you find any contributions on air or comments online upsetting or offensive, you can also flag them and we will assess it against our guidelines. Please send an email to info@nigeriainfo.fm. Nigeria Info is constantly reviewing its policies in order to create an environment conducive to constructive conversation. Thanks for your cooperation.
Structure,
lease,
construction,
edifice,
infrastructure,
masterpiece,
residential, industrial, commercial.
Define, design, refine. Architect's World. Delving into the field of design. Opening the mind to possibilities, highlighting opportunities for everyday living. Architects World, Tuesdays 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on 92.3 Nigeria Info.
right, good afternoon to you. Welcome back to your number one talk news and sports radio station, Nigeria Info FM. 14 minutes gone past 2. Welcome to the Architect's World. On this show every Tuesday, we're going to talk everything within the world of design. As always, my guest today is architect Ebi Bozimo. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Hi, good afternoon, Gabby. Great to be here.
You're welcome. Trust you had a great weekend.
Well, it's been utterly awesome. I enjoyed a lot of fellowship with my old schoolmates.
Is that a Christmas ritual?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, Unity Schools Association.
Oh, yeah,
we had
thing.
a number of events, very, very nice.
Amazing. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
All right, so today we're going to be talking a very interesting, I think it's a very interesting conversation. We do not talk about this enough, in my opinion, in Nigeria. Today we're talking imperatives of inclusive design. What's this, Architect Bozimo?
Okay, the definition of inclusive design is design that has taken into consideration the diversity of people. There are 7 odd billion of us on the planet, so there is really no average. Each of us, yes, we have general ideas about size, height, weight, but each person has their own unique approach to the environment that they're working in. It could be from inside, from outside. Some of us are differently abled. This actually always occurs to me, first of all, as a professional architect. But it is always highlighted when you remember that December 3rd, this year was United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And there have been a number of things that, have come up to do with that. And it's important at all times that the environment that we all share is able to make each of us function to our full potential. Starting from that International Day, in many climes, you find that there are very strict codes that guide how you must design not just your buildings, but the spaces in between buildings, in short, the entire society, to ensure that those who may not have the same mobility perhaps as some of us do right now can also move around with dignity. I mean, it's always great if you see somebody that you can help who may be crossing a road or something, by all means do that. That's a sign of good upbringing. But that person shouldn't need to depend on that help. And the environment in which we live should facilitate people moving safely within it. So you'll find that in some other climes, every corner, every road intersection, there's, first of all, there's a sidewalk, but that sidewalk is sloped down to the level of the road, so that if a person is coming either partially sighted so they can't see and they're using a cane, they're able to sense that they have come to a corner by 2 things. 1, the slope. 2, the texture on the surface, for them to know that this is a change of surface. So even without you being there, they're able to navigate their way. Then if they happen to be on a wheelchair or something, they can manipulate the wheelchair from one side of the road to the other. Where you have things like zebra crossings. The zebra crossings are carefully placed opposite such places so that a person who is manipulating themselves through the environment can go from one surface to the other seamlessly. What we find around, and I want to first of all give credit, about 2 years ago, on the 23rd of January or something, President Buhari signed into law a bill that had been presented. He signed it into law that prohibits any form of discrimination against people with disabilities. And it goes as far as it should into any form of discrimination against people with disabilities in the built environment. In fact, from that 2019, there's a 5-year clock that instructs that all public buildings must be modified or updated to ensure that they are also able to accommodate disabled people within 5 years. So the clock started rolling in 2019. Let's even accept that 2020 was a quote-unquote non-year. At least, quote unquote. But after 5 years, so let's say by 2025, every public building should be disabled friendly. And I've seen all around us people making they just simp. Yes, there is a sloped surface and it comes from one level to the other. But honestly, when you look at those surfaces, there are codes that are supposed to guide how those ramps operate. There is normally a maximum of 1 in 12 inch, 1 inch up in 12 inches. So it's a 1 in 12 slope. But you find that many of these ramps are up to 45 degrees. They are so steep that even for a person who is not, disabled, you could very easily fall just trying to navigate them. And so you often find that on many of our streets that sidewalks have been provided, people end up walking the road down, arcing and falls. And so the whole purpose of doing that has been missed. And that is because many of these roads being engineered around here are not complying with standard codes. I haven't been used to that so much around here. It stunned me some years back when I went to South Africa, and from the hotel to a store that I had to go to was over 1 kilometer. Yet the entire length from that hotel to the store, they maintain consistent height differential between the road surface and the sidewalk of exactly half a foot, 6 inches or 150 millimeters. It was consistent at every entry to premises. They would bring the slope down, and so you found that the walk was very comfortable. If anybody was on a bicycle or on a wheelchair, they could actually go all the way safely. But the way you have our roads and our sidewalks here, first of all, they're about 40 millimeters between, that's over 1 foot between the road surface and the sidewalk. It's so common. So even for a person that's not disabled, you really have to raise, when you are there, you don't dare come down until you actually know. And that is not a good urban environment. I've seen this happening so often, and I ask engineers why. Nobody has given me a convincing reason. I'm beginning to suspect that it's just so that they can increase the cost of the project, because there is no other reason I can fathom why you'd make the sidewalk so much higher. Another school of thought says because of the indiscipline of many Nigerian drivers, they want to make the sidewalks so high that people cannot put their tires onto the roads, onto the sidewalks and drive or park.
Something I saw yesterday. It's unrelated, but this just reminded me. You never know what Nigerians can do, And I totally agree. I was in traffic yesterday heading home, and this cab, right, drives past. There was a deadlock 4-lane traffic.
Right.
There was a gutter on this end, right, and the cab driver drove above the gutter with
he straddled the gutter with two sides.
Yes.
I saw that on a bus yesterday, and I could not believe it 2 days ago.
And he had passengers who were comfortable. It's insane.
You see, so I guess there is an element of truth to that, the insanity of some drivers, but I believe that insanity can be cured very well with consequences.
True.
I am draconian. If I had to say, I would make sure that when you do like that, your 4 tires are punctured, stripped from your vehicle, so you start afresh on your rims. If it happens once, it won't happen twice. But to also often even look at the nice roads that have been made now around GRA Junction, people are constantly driving against traffic. When a brand new beautiful road with street light, where all you have to go and do is do a proper U-turn, instead they drive against traffic, and of course that causes a congestion. There are devices that actually exist called tire destroyers that you can put at such an intersection so that if you are driving in line with traffic, your wheels can press them down and you go forward. But if you're going against traffic, they will shred your tires. I recommend them to the governor. I would suggest that he puts that at each and every one of those intersections, and you will have some traffic sanity in and around Port Harcourt to complement the good work he has done with some of these roads. But setting that aside, back to inclusive design. We are talking about design that facilitates and enables every category of people from cradle to grave to do what they must do in that space as appropriate in a comfortable and safe manner. And there are elements to this. There is, of course, controlling the connected levels. Too often you find that to access some entrances, you are stumbling, tripping and falling. If you have the choice, for instance, of putting a set of steps and there's not enough space for a step and a ramp, the choice should be to provide the ramp only, because a person who doesn't have difficulty can negotiate a ramp, but a person who has some difficulty cannot negotiate a step. So make sure that if you will, the most common denominator is the one that's prioritized at all times. Where possible, make sure that certain functions are accessible to people on certain levels. If you must change those levels, provide the means to access them, perhaps with an elevator. Some would say, but those cost very much. Yes, those are part of you saying, I'm trying to ensure that the maximum number and diversity of people are accommodated. Inclusive design is a mentality that, well, in school we're taught about it, but it's becoming more and more important as time goes on, because you cannot have a situation where certain categories of people feel either excluded, they're not enabled, they can't perform at their full capacity because of the physical environment in which we find ourselves. I'll give an example I've used sometime before. I read somewhere, and it really struck me, that the experience of multi-story car parking, which you find in certain places, is very different for a man and for a woman. And why do I say that? Even both of them are fully able. For a man entering that kind of maybe deserted space at 8 p.m. at night, all you're thinking of is, where did I park my car? Oh, it's over at the end, I have to walk over there. You're thinking very, very little about your personal safety. For a woman, in that same space and time, of course, she is thinking about her vehicle, but she's also additionally conscious of her sense of physical security. So for a designer, you would make sure that in designing that car park, you provide as many lines of sight as possible, you maximize the illumination, you minimize dark corners and so on, so that for her as well, walking through that car park, she is not too agitated. I mean, personal security applies to both genders, of course, but for obvious reasons, physically, it may be more of a threat for a lady. So it is that kind of consciousness. Also, take how in public buildings where people need to ease themselves. For men, the process is relatively straightforward. So you'll find that in design, often when you provide one stall or two stalls for the males and maybe two other urinals, you must provide sufficient space for the women because of the mechanics of easing themselves. And then the process for men, you walk in, you walk out. For women, there's always much more drama, preparation and all that. So in your design, you must take into consideration that diversity of gender. It's the expected thing. So you would never expect just to have, except it's such a small institution, you have one store for each person and everybody manages. But if that's not the case, when you have more space, you make the necessary provision. What you're doing is including the needs and considerations of each gender as appropriate. Inclusive design is really about making the world easier for everyone to navigate and operate, minimizing barriers. You don't want a situation where somebody thinks, I'd like to go somewhere, or worse, I need to go somewhere. And by the time they think of all the challenges they would face, they have already been exhausted considering it. Each person should be able to focus on the goal, the target of their necessary outing. And by design, the architects, the structural engineers, I say the architects because we deal with the spaces, the colors, the signage, textures. The structural engineers deal with the sidewalks, the road surfaces and all that. The electrical engineers could deal with even the signage, lighting and all that. And mechanical engineers would deal with any aspects that make that process comfortable. Everyone is involved in making sure that inclusive design is the ultimate goal. I'm talking now, of course, of mainly public or institutional buildings, things like schools and all that. But we all have to interact with those at one point or the other. Have you ever had to go and get an affidavit? Yes, you don't live in a court, but on that day, you went to the court. Were you able to get to the various offices you needed to get to? Were you able to get there easily? You had to go to school and get your child or something. Were you able to get to the school, sign in properly? Were you able to communicate with the people to bring your child out? These are all situations where, even though they're not your residence, you have to interact. You go to a market. How are our markets? In many cases, unfortunately, our markets are not living up to the standards. And that's unfortunate for the traders inside as well as those who come to visit. The entire process, the entire interaction could be so much better if all these considerations were there. Even, let's start with the people who bring their goods there. How much easier would it be if you could just roll a wheelbarrow up to somewhere and drop your goods, as opposed to carrying them over steps and humps and all that? It's that much more difficult. Then for the person coming to buy, by the time you've got in, you navigated, you've bought, getting your things from your salesperson to your vehicle or to the roadside where you must take transport should be as easy as possible. The two parties could benefit if the entire area has been considered from the perspective of inclusive design.
Amazing. Wow. We're going to have to take a very quick break now, and when we return, we'd like for you to join the conversation. If you have questions or thoughts you'd like to share, you'll be able to do that right after that, the break. The numbers to call are 0817 923 0002, 0817 923 0003. You can also call 0817 923 0007 or 0817 923 0009. Don't go away. Welcome back to Architect's World. This is your number one talk news and sports radio station, Nigeria Info FM. I'm Gabriella. My guest today is architect Bozimo, and today we're talking about the imperatives of inclusive design. It's been an interesting, somewhat 30 minutes or so just talking about this. You can join the conversation as well. The phone lines are open, so you can call in live. You can also send a message on WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is 0809-030-6416. We're also streaming live on Facebook, so you can join the conversation on there at Nigeria Info 92.3
There is something that happened, and it really struck me how, like you say, there's some people who try and make a nod towards inclusivity, but they're doing it wrong. There's a place my wife normally volunteers, and one day she asked me and my daughter to go so that we could work with her. The first thing was, when I got there, I noticed that the person who was in charge of the activities was a double amputee. Both of her legs had been amputated at the knee. However, she was in this powered wheelchair. So she was moving around, giving instructions and directing us on what to do. And, she was so happy with my daughter and me joining my wife. She said, you know what, one day I've got to visit Nigeria. And my wife and I looked at each other and we said, this woman doesn't know. This way that she's moving around here,
It's not possible.
it's not even possible. That is the gulf. You see, inclusive design takes care of the least of us. And guess what? Each of us is the least of us. I say that because you just consider on a day when you are sick with something as simple as malaria, all the vitality and energy that you think you have today disappears. That is when people come and be taking care of you, helping you wash your clothes, helping you do this and that. The whole you that feels so robust and energetic, you'll find that on that day, you actually are as disabled, if you will, as a person who maybe is experiencing permanent disabilities. And so it is in our collective best interests to ensure that we design the world in which we live in a way that each of us can manage to navigate easily. Remove barriers. Make transition between levels as gentle as the codes dictate. This whole thing where you just make a nod and put a ramp that you could take off a jet engine from is not doing it right. And the standards exist, and the professionals exist to help put the standards in place. Utilize the professionals. All of this is for our collective good. Today you might be driving in a bulletproof vehicle, but tomorrow those stages and phases of life always live. And you would want to have created the kind of society where you, at your peak and at a different stage, at least maintain your dignity through all things.
Amazing. Wow. Let's see if we have any comments on Facebook. Remember, we're streaming live on there at Nigeria Info 92.3 The numbers once again to call are 0817-923-0002, 0817-923-0003. You can also call 0817-923-0007 or 0817-923-0009. Now, before we wrap up, we're going to wrap up as soon as we can. What are some of the steps that individual, now I know the government has a huge role to play when it comes to design of public spaces, but as individuals within the sector who are looking to build a residential buildings or commercial buildings, most of these are owned by private individuals.
Indeed.
So what are the right steps to take when it comes to that? But hold that thoughts. I think we have a call coming through, so let's quickly take that person. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon, you're welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, Gabriella.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bozimo.
Good afternoon.
In another way, I say post-meridian salutations.
Okay.
And felicitations in regard of the Yuletide. I want us to digress just a little bit from what you are talking about. Having some medical issues, so I've been going to UPTH for a while now, and I observed that the building, the structure, the superstructure is kind of defective. It's leaking. The bypass ways, the hallways, the outpatient halls, the rooms, even where I was, it was so embarrassing, where I was being interviewed interviewed by a doctor, consultant, directly on my head, just leaking. So I now went upstairs the following week and I looked. Some of the issues were crisscross pipes, conduit pipes. Then the bitumen at the southern is a multi-story building. They laid bitumen. You used to talk things like that, you know.
Right.
So some of the side is leaking from the bitumen and the walls are being soaked. It's a recipe for disaster because any moment when I hear that BPT has collapsed, all the buildings, all those walls, most of them are leaking, a good percentage. And so it needs a turnaround. Can you use your expert as an architect and your architect Bozimo? Can you analyze what is the problem so that government officials can take notes?
Well, from your description, there appear to be defects in the construction. I have visited there, but maybe I've not spent as much time as you on. Maybe I went there on a dry day, so I didn't experience it. But it sounds like there are defects that happen during construction, or maintenance hasn't been carried out on things like the felt and all that. I don't know how long the building has been in place. Periodically, many of these aspects and elements of the building should be maintained, updated, and upgraded, just to make sure that the building remains weatherproof. It would be a process where you would do an existing condition survey, determine what is dilapidated, put together a process to restore it. It doesn't have to all happen at once. You could tackle the most egregious things and work your way down to the simpler things. But definitely a building where a diversity of people are coming to like that should be better maintained based on his description. As I say, I haven't seen it myself. Right. But when he mentioned the hospital, a hospital is the typical example of a space where all sorts of people come. Many times they are not in the best state of health. So that's one of the key places you would find that inclusive design is absolutely imperative. You need to be able to move people in and out, sometimes on wheelchairs, other times on stretchers, and there you are considering the width of this equipment, make it can go through the doors. You want to make sure that where the concept you are imposing on the environment, and there are standards and methods and everything that the professionals involved have to apply. And even when it hasn't been done at first, it is possible to retrofit it, but it's always better to do it up front, do it correctly the first time.
All right, so this will be a final call because we'll have to wrap up soon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your Honor, good afternoon.
Go ahead.
I think I'm seeing now, when rain falls now, the soak away water now. In there, with your bag, you have the water supposed to be flowing down. It will now be pumping out. And all the pipes, they embedded all the pipes in the ground. So check, I've brought lumber, check every year because it falls. If you put that you're building a house, you have this soak away pipe with a block. There is just a case like this happening. So I want to ask the engineer to tell me how what to do. Thank you very much. God bless.
All right, thank you very much.
First of all, I'm an architect, not an engineer.
Right.
Second, there appear to be building processes that were not properly followed, or what was done has deteriorated. It depends on how old the house is. But really, you don't want to have water, your wastewater mixing with your your soil water. There's something obviously very defective there, and properly, maybe it's beyond a plumber. You may need to get a mechanical engineer to sit down and understand what's wrong and then prescribe the solution. So it's not everything that's as simple as just getting a plumber, because they might just be tracing what exists. There could be a conceptual fault or flaw that has to be detected, corrected, and then they can make that work.
All right, so our time is totally up, but let's quickly wrap up the conversation and then have your social media handles.
Basically, I'm talking about designing for all of us. That is what inclusive design entails, ensuring that every one of us, no matter our situation or state, can utilize spaces safely and comfortably. And it's a concept that is gaining increasing ground, because you must make sure, like the government is doing, and ensuring the government has a role to ensure that every public building complies. Right. Then as professionals, we know what to do. But private people should also understand that these are worth doing, because you increase the number of people that can engage your project. There's much more to talk about, but time is up. I normally would let you know if you wanted us to have further conversations. I can be reached on my social handles at Bozimo, at AB Bozimo on all the normal handles. At least over there, I can get a message.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Always a pleasure and a privilege. We must take care of the least amongst us because we are they.
Wow, that's profound. Thank you so much. Got to wrap up now. Talk to you again tomorrow same time. I am Gabriella Anyanwu.